There's something about you that darkness has always feared, something it sensed before you ever took your first breath, something woven into your spirit that cannot be duplicated, diluted, or destroyed, and that is why the warfare on your life didn't wait until adulthood to begin. It began when you were still learning how to walk, how to speak, how to trust, how to dream. Because you weren't just another soul passing through this world, you were marked by heaven, assigned for disruption in the best kind of way, chosen not just to survive the curses in your bloodline but to break them, reverse them, and stand where no one before you had the strength or the spiritual authority to stand. And even though life may have tried to convince you that you are ordinary, even though the people closest to you may have dismissed your calling, minimized your intuition, or mocked your dreams, I, Archangel Michael, have come to tell you what you already feel deep in your bones: you are the one. You are the interruption. You are the exception. You are the one who will pass through what others collapsed under. And it's not because you're perfect. It's not because you've had it easy. It's not because you've always made the right choices. It's because heaven trusted you with a battle that could not be fought with weapons of this world, only with endurance, with discernment, with unshakable faith forged in seasons of silent suffering. You may have been born into dysfunction, rejection, betrayal, or abandonment, but even those beginnings could not erase the authority that was placed inside you before the foundations of the earth were formed. That's why you've always felt different, even in a crowded room. That's why your heart aches in ways you can't explain. That's why every attempt to blend in or lower your light eventually felt like soul-deep betrayal. Because heaven didn't send you to blend. Heaven sent you to break cycles. Heaven sent you to raise standards. Heaven sent you to build bridges between generations. And yes, it's cost you. People have misunderstood you, distanced themselves from you, blamed you for the tension your presence created. But that tension wasn't you. It was the resistance rising up against your calling. It was the spiritual atmosphere shaking under the weight of your potential. It was the enemy scrambling to shut down what it recognized as a divine threat. And that's why the attacks on your life have been so strange, so personal, so unrelenting. That's why you've had to battle in silence, smile through storms, carry others while you felt empty, and pray for people who left you bleeding. But here's the truth you need to hear right now: no curse can land where God's covenant has taken root. No demon can derail what heaven has ordained. No generational bondage can hold back someone who has been spiritually positioned to break through. And you, yes you, were born for this exact moment in history. Not to be perfect. Not to impress. But to overcome. To silence every curse that said you wouldn't make it. To reverse every lie that said you'd never be enough. To walk through doors your ancestors only dreamed of touching. And I know you've questioned whether you're strong enough to carry what you've been given. I know you've asked God why He allowed certain things to happen, why He didn't step in sooner, why He didn't shield you from certain betrayals or losses or breakdowns. But the truth is, you weren't being punished, you were being prepared. You weren't being destroyed, you were being distilled. Everything you thought would break you was actually carving out the depth you needed to walk in an authority that no counterfeit could imitate. And though you may feel like you're still in process, still healing, still waiting, I am telling you now, the time of hiding is coming to an end. The time of breaking is giving way to building. The time of being overlooked is about to be replaced with divine recognition. But you must understand, this isn't about fame, or applause, or proving yourself to people who never saw your worth. This is about heaven making a statement through your life. This is about God showing the world what it looks like when someone refuses to bow to the curses that tried to claim them. This is about walking in a strength that doesn't scream but is felt by every spirit in the room. This is about living proof that you can come from chaos and still create peace, that you can be abandoned and still embody love, that you can be attacked and still carry healing. And the ones who tried to curse you, they'll have no choice but to witness your rise. Not because you sought revenge. Not because you forced your way to the top. But because you stayed faithful, even when it hurt. Because you let God build you when no one else believed in you. Because you protected your spirit in the shadows, and now heaven is ready to unveil what it's been shaping in the silence all along. There are times when you wondered why certain people distanced themselves from you for no apparent reason, why sudden silence fell where there once was warmth, or why opportunities that seemed perfectly aligned vanished without warning. And I'm here to tell you, it wasn't your fault, and it wasn't rejection in the way you thought it was. It was divine interference, protection dressed as disappointment, heaven removing access to environments, relationships, and paths that could not hold the weight of your assignment. Because what rests upon you isn't light. It's not common. It's not something that can be contained in shallow waters or temporary affections. You carry a vibration that unsettles what's fake, exposes what's hidden, and irritates the comfort zones of people still choosing patterns you were sent to break. And even if you've tried to water yourself down for acceptance, there's something about your spirit that refuses to be quieted for too long. You can't shrink into roles that contradict your design. You can't settle into rhythms that make your soul restless. You were born to carry fire, not ashes. You were born to rebuild what others let fall apart. And yes, you've been called arrogant for trusting your gut. You've been accused of being too much just for honoring your boundaries. But that wasn't arrogance. That was discernment. That wasn't pride. That was spiritual self-defense. Because when you're chosen, even your silence carries authority. Even your presence carries disruption. Even your smile can trigger a battle in someone else's spirit, and not because you've harmed them, but because your healing reveals their wounds. Your growth reminds them of where they stopped. Your faith highlights their fear. And that's why you've been resisted, doubted, challenged, and even betrayed by people who once cheered for you, because your elevation made them face parts of themselves they weren't ready to confront. But don't confuse that with failure. Don't take their absence as proof that you're not enough. Because I, Archangel Michael, am telling you now that the shedding is sacred. The losses were strategic. The silence around you wasn't emptiness. It was sacred insulation, while heaven was reconfiguring your next level. You weren't being abandoned, you were being aligned. And if you only knew what God protected you from in the spaces you cried to remain in, you'd fall to your knees in gratitude. If you only knew what curses were trying to take root through the hands you once begged to hold, you'd rejoice over every door that slammed, every phone call that stopped, every connection that faded without explanation. Because you weren't being discarded. You were being upgraded. You were being escorted out of danger you couldn't yet perceive. And now the time has come to embrace the full weight of who you are. Not what the world labeled you. Not what trauma convinced you of. Not what others projected onto you in their insecurity. But who heaven always knew you were, one who walks with divine backing, one who disrupts demonic systems just by standing in truth, one whose prayers shake realms, even when whispered from a place of exhaustion. And yes, the warfare may have intensified recently. The dreams may have gotten darker. The heaviness may have pressed on you at night. But that is not a sign that you're under attack because you're weak. It's confirmation that you're advancing. That you've become a threat. That the enemy has run out of distractions strong enough to derail you, and now it's using discouragement as a final attempt to silence your voice. But I'm here to remind you, you are not cursed. You are called. You are not being punished. You are being positioned. You are not falling behind. You are being refined for a mission most people wouldn't even survive. You've been chosen to end what enslaved your lineage, to walk in blessings your ancestors could only pray for, to be the blueprint for a new bloodline of healing, favor, and power. And the very forces that tried to bury you will soon watch you bloom in places they said you'd never reach. Not because you're trying to prove anything, but because God has decided your time has come. So hold on. The tears haven't been wasted. The silence hasn't been empty. The separation hasn't been random. You are still standing for a reason. And the next chapter that's about to unfold in your life will not just validate your pain, it will vindicate your purpose in a way that leaves every curse nullified and every mocking voice silenced by the evidence of what heaven always knew you were born to carry. There is a divine power rising in you right now that no one, absolutely no one, can intercept, diminish, or explain away, and the reason it's been hidden for so long is not because it was absent, but because God was sharpening it in silence. You were never meant to blend in. You were never meant to belong in rooms that couldn't hold your spirit. Even as a child, you felt out of place, misunderstood, even punished for simply feeling deeper than others, sensing more than words, hearing what wasn't spoken aloud. That wasn't weakness. That wasn't oversensitivity. That was your spiritual radar being activated long before you had the language to understand it. And now that same radar is alerting you again, louder than before, telling you something is shifting beneath the surface, telling you the strange isolation, the spiritual tiredness, the divine detours. All of it is happening because heaven is rearranging your surroundings in preparation for a visibility you've never experienced before. But understand this. The level you're about to step into requires spiritual insulation that is stronger than applause, deeper than validation, and more enduring than temporary loyalty. Because when God marks a soul like yours, when He ordains you to be the one no curse can touch, it doesn't just come with favor, it comes with fire. A refining fire that burns off false attachments. A fire that exposes hidden agendas. A fire that lights up every space you walk into and shows you who was sent and who was assigned against you. And yes, it hurts when people shift. Yes, it stings when the ones you trusted with your heart seem to disappear when you needed their voice the most. But Archangel Michael tells you now, this isn't abandonment. This is a divine detox. God is removing access, not out of cruelty, but out of mercy, because the next part of your purpose demands that you no longer confuse proximity with loyalty, or history with destiny. There are people who are only meant to witness your potential, but not partake in the fulfillment of it. There are rooms you were allowed to observe, so you know how not to shrink your light in the future. There are conversations you were exposed to, not so you'd internalize the words spoken about you, but so you'd recognize the voices you never again allow to influence your path. You are not who you used to be, and the old weapons formed against you no longer apply to who you are now becoming. That's why old curses can't hold. That's why old triggers don't sting the same. That's why old manipulations no longer confuse you. Because your soul has been upgraded. You have been recoded by heaven. The chains that held your ancestors in silence, in shame, in scarcity, they met their end with you. The generational weight that broke so many in your family line has collided with someone heaven refused to let bend. And now your name is being spoken in places you haven't even entered. Now your steps are being ordered into territories your bloodline never dared touch. And as that happens, expect the shaking. Expect people to say, "You've changed." Expect old patterns to scream for attention. Expect unexpected warfare. But don't misinterpret that shaking as a sign you're in the wrong place. That shaking is confirmation that you've stepped into your power. You were never made for still waters. You were made to shift atmospheres. You were made to be the interruption to every dark agenda that tried to repeat itself. You were made to stand while others bowed. You were made to carry a frequency that heaven can amplify even in your silence. And no weapon formed against you will prosper, not because you're invincible, but because you're aligned. Because what's covering you isn't ordinary. I, Archangel Michael, have been dispatched more times than you realize, not to rescue you from mistakes, but to shield you from traps you didn't see coming. From relationships you thought were blessings but were spiritually draining. From decisions that seemed promising but carried curses disguised as favor. And even now, your life is being held in suspension, not to punish you, but to prepare you for the elevation that cannot be faked, bought, or manipulated into. So keep listening. Keep walking. Keep praying, even when your voice trembles. Because the heavens haven't gone quiet on you. They've simply gone to work. And what's coming next will be so irreversible, so undeniable, that even those who doubted your survival will have to acknowledge your anointing, not because you shouted your greatness, but because your resilience will be the loudest sermon you ever preach. Keep moving. Your shadow breaks curses now. Your footsteps shake generational patterns. You are not here to repeat. You are here to rebuild. And now we reach the part of your journey where heaven has chosen not just to defend you but to display you, not as a trophy of survival, but as living evidence that when God marks someone, no fire, no slander, no loss, no curse has the power to erase what He's written in your destiny. You were not only born to overcome, You were born to break cycles. That's why your battles have been heavier than most. That's why your isolation wasn't punishment, it was preparation. You weren't being left out, you were being led away. From distractions. From people whose love was conditional. From places that couldn't hold the fullness of your calling. And yes, Archangel Michael knows how tired your soul has been, how many nights you've cried not for answers, but just for a moment of peace. But I was there. I saw you keep going when no one clapped. I saw you keep believing when no sign appeared. I saw you turn down shortcuts and silent compromises when the easier road begged for your surrender. And now I tell you, the delay was never denial. It was divine recalibration. You are not arriving late, you are arriving ready. Ready for the kind of favor that will make people ask where you've been hiding. Ready for the kind of peace that won't need a crowd to feel whole. Ready for the kind of clarity that finally makes the confusion of the last few seasons make sense. Because God has been writing a story through your scars, and the chapter that's about to begin cannot be read through the lens of your past wounds. You are not what you lost. You are what you lived through. You are not what walked away. You are what refused to stay down. And now heaven is opening doors that don't just lead to more opportunity, but to alignment so pure, so exact, that what once strained you won't even be able to stand in your atmosphere. You'll walk into places where curses used to function and they will break upon your entry, not because you spoke, but because of the light that surrounds you. The very same family lines that feared they'd never see restoration will be healed through your obedience. The patterns that tormented others will fall silent in your presence. You won't even have to explain your journey, your glow will testify louder than your words. This is what you were built for. This is why the enemy works so hard to keep you questioning your worth. Because if you ever believed it fully, if you ever stepped into your authority without shrinking, the atmosphere would shift in your favor permanently. And now you have. You've crossed that invisible line. You've said yes, with your spirit even when your mouth was shaking. You've decided to let go of what was not sent. You've given God your surrender, not just your complaints. And now heaven is answering, not with noise, but with clarity. Not with chaos, but with confirmation. So prepare. Because starting now, you'll begin to see divine echoes in your everyday life. A stranger will speak words you only whispered in prayer. A delay will suddenly make sense. A door you thought was closed for good will creak open in your favor, and behind it will be more than you prayed for. It will be what God preserved just for you. And when you walk into it, you'll feel something shift in your spirit like never before. Because this time, you'll know it wasn't luck, or charm, or coincidence. It was covenant. It was divine reversal. It was Archangel Michael guarding you when you didn't know you were a target. It was your obedience, echoing into realms you can't see but will now begin to experience. And I must tell you this, before you go, there is still one final piece you must carry: silence. Yes, silence. Because what God is building next for you cannot be announced before it is sealed. This breakthrough requires sacredness. So protect your dreams from premature exposure. Guard your plans from mouths not assigned to carry them. Share your miracles only when heaven says, now. And watch how quickly things accelerate when you resist the urge to prove, defend, or explain. Because now, the greatest proof will not be your words, but your walk. You have stepped into the frequency of the unshakable, the invincible, the heaven-backed. And from this moment on, every curse will break upon contact with your name. Every plan formed against you will fall apart before it reaches you. Every betrayal will turn into redirection. You are no longer in hiding. You are no longer in danger. You are rising as the one God chose. You are rising as the one the curse could not touch. And everything is about to change. Starting now.